Hello there, welcome to this podcast on Simon Armitage and the poem About His Person. I would suggest that when you listen to these podcasts that you have the poem in front of you and you have a pencil in your hand, because probably the best way of revising the poetry is to listen to these podcasts, and as you're listening just to be making notes, jotting things down, underlining things as you go on. Each one of these podcasts will only be about 5 minutes in length, so for some poems there will be more than one podcast. And in a way this is quite good because it means that you can focus on one area per podcast, which I think should be quite helpful for you, so you're not focusing on too much in one go. It also means you can go make a cup of tea as well. There'll be nothing actually on the screen when I'm talking, it will just be your audio, so if you just want to listen to this when you're walking to school, obviously not cycling to school because that would be unsafe. When you're, trying to get to sleep at night and you want to hear my calming tones soothing you to sleep, I think this hopefully will be quite useful for you. So let's look in this podcast about the basics of About His Person by Simon Armitage. So, when you're revising a poem, it's probably a good idea initially just to have an idea as to what the poem is about. And when you come to write about the poem, when you first write about the poem, to be able to briefly summarise the poem is very useful, because it shows you understand what the poem is about before you start looking at details. Don't get too caught up in details initially, just try and show the examiner that you understand what the poem is about initially. So let's look at About His Person. Let's just read it through because it's quite short. £5.50 in change exactly, a library card on its date of expiry. A postcard stamped, unwritten, but franked. A pocket-sized diary slashed with a pencil from March 24th to the 1st of April. A brace of keys for a mortise lock, an analogue watch, self-winding, stopped. A final demand in his own hand. A rolled-up note of explanation, planted there like a spray carnation, but beheaded in his fist. A shopping list. A giveaway photograph stashed in his wallet, a keepsake banked in the heart of a locket. No gold or silver, but crowning one finger, a ring of white, unweathered skin. That was everything. Okay, so the poem is about a man, and the man is dead, and he's been found dead. We don't know by who, doesn't really matter. But he's a dead man, and he's got things on him, and these things on him tell us something about him. They are about his person, as in they are on his person, but they're also telling us about this person, they're telling us something about him. But what we notice straight away is all of these items are rather curious, they're rather unusual, they're rather cryptic, and by cryptic we mean they're difficult to decipher. You can't pin down exactly what these items tell us about this man. And in many ways this makes it a little bit of a frustrating poem to read. We can't nail this person's identity, this person's character, based on the things that he has on him. But each of these items must have something significant to do with him. £5.50 in change exactly, a library card, a postcard, a diary, some keys, so on and so forth. So when we get to analyse the poem in the next podcast and look at these items in a little bit more detail, we'll begin to understand why it is that Simon Armitage has chosen these particular items to tell us something or not tell us anything very much about his character. So when we first write about this poem, when we first talk about this poem, we would talk about how Simon Armitage is exploring identity. He's exploring someone's character, he's exploring maybe someone's past, maybe their recent past or maybe their not so recent past, based entirely on the objects that are on the person. And as we go on in this and look at the poem in more detail, we'll begin to realise that what Simon Armitage is telling us is that it's very, very hard to pin a person down by the things that they have on them, that we're more than just the objects, and that this deliberate cryptic and confusing nature of these objects tells us that actually it's very, very hard to really understand someone by the objects that they carry. We'll look a little bit more in the next podcast about the details of the objects themselves.